Folks, welcome to another Sales Wisdom podcast. Today with us, we have Jonathan, aka Jonny Fowler. He's Vice President Biz Dev at AFN, that is American Financial Network. He's also an author, and he was named one of the most prominent, most connected folks on LinkedIn by NMP. That was a complex intro. I don't do those often, John. Was that good or not?
It was absolutely beautiful. And like I said, I don't care what you call me. Just don't call me late to supper.
That's good. So we're going to learn a ton about like B2C sales, I guess. We're going to talk about your past. We can start with that. What's your story, John? Tell us about the rags to riches stuff that we like to hear every now and then.
All right. So I was born in the summer of 1968 in Texarkana, Texas. My father was a mechanic millwright and my mother was a stay-at-home mom. We lived in a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, single wide trailer and did that from 1968 up until 1975. My father was oil field and my mom was self-taught when she went to work, at different businesses. But we weren't destitute, but we didn't have a whole lot. And one of the things that I learned early on is that there was a way. I didn't know how, but there was a way. My parents had friends that had, multiple cars and 2-story houses and things like that. And they went out to restaurants to eat and things like that. So I kind of figured that out, that there was a way, and I didn't know how to get there, but I knew that I wanted to, and I knew that there was a way to do it. At the time, especially when I was younger, huge fan of like Donald Trump. Things that at the time, before he ever ran for president, anything like that, in my country, that's what we used to talk about, is anybody could grow up to be Donald Trump. And that was something that I wanted to do. So our schools, in my opinion, are not the best in the US. I'd rank them, I think, just like they are already ranked, pretty low. They taught you how to put a condom on a banana and things like that, but they really didn't help you anyway. And I was escorted out from my 11th year by my principal, and he told me the best I could ever hope for was to be a bouncer in a bar or a club.
My God.
And so that gave me the determination. I followed in my father's footsteps for a little while, and I worked in the oil field industry from the time I was a late teen until my late 20s. And then by accident in 1994, I bought my first house and I financed my first house. And I kind of, for mixed reasons, kind of fell in love with the business. I had a really bad experience buying my first property. But it kind of made me want to learn the business, and I started taking classes on it. And when I learned how the business worked and where the money came from and why somebody was loaning me $73,000, it made me go a little bit farther, a little bit deeper. And I got into this business in 1994, and I have been doing it ever since. And I truly fell in love with this business. Now, the business has had its ups and downs, just like every other business. But, even in the down times, I could not think of anything else that I wanted to do more. So that's kind of my story in a very quick nutshell.
Yeah, well, we share lots in common. Me, I grew up middle class, so never had, the poverty affect me. Up until, ironically, I went and flew by my own wings and started my own businesses. And then I started really feeling it in some periods, right? So I lived it. I lived it that way. But the most common thing that we have is that we're both misfits with the educational system. I spent more than 60 to 70% of the time outside the class, was the class clown. Teachers hated me. And yeah, I was told like similar stuff, probably that they're a bit nicer in Canada, but yeah, like it was similar to me. And I always had this ambition to prove something or someone wrong, without consciously knowing it. And that's when I first discovered sales, making 200 phone calls a day. How was the beginning of your sales career? How was the hustle? And how did you knew that sales was the thing for you?
Mine is really funny because I still didn't realize, and it took me quite some time in sales to realize that I was in sales. I started off as what we call a loan officer, mortgage loan officer. And I worked for a mortgage broker. And what he told me to do, and this is way back in the day where everything was paper and handwritten, and he told me to go out and visit builders, home builders offices, and real estate agency offices, and talk to them, give them rate sheets and give them donuts. And for some reason, they were supposed to give me loans. And for me, I found out very quickly that if I brought no value to the system, that there really wasn't a need for me, because there was 10 or 20 other people that were going to walk in those same doors that day that I did. And if I didn't bring any value to the system, there was no need for me. So one of the things that I did, I've always had a mechanical and inquisitive mind. So I started trying to figure out what it is that I can bring to this system and what it is that I can do to help people. I love helping people. I was the first one there. If you were going to move, I was the first one there to help you move. If you needed, whatever it was, I was always going to help people. And I enjoy that. And it was bringing something to that system. Well, then at the time, this is when we were first really getting computers. We were first getting the internet. This is back in the day of dial-up and, the old 386DX computer from Radio Shack and things like that. So one of the things that I figured out, and I was always really good at, is introducing people and making those commonalities and making connections. So that was one of the things that I started doing, is introducing and helping people, and making that come together. So I didn't really realize I was in sales until 4 years after I got into sales.
I'm laughing because this is the opposite of being a bouncer, right?
Oh God, yes. Very much
or,
so. So when
or
I was
maybe
younger,
the best bouncers are actually people, connected people. They use that to not like create conflicts inside clubs, and they talk it out, right?
Well, that was one of the big things. I've always been into martial arts.
Nice.
Up until my late 20s, I competed very frequently, sometimes weekly. And it was, if you've ever had any kind of training like that, I guess part of the confidence that it instills is you realize what you can do and you don't have to, and it's easier to de-escalate and it's easier to talk, things like that. So I'm really glad that you caught that and brought that up, because that's one of the things about it is bringing those together. And you're 100% correct. There is not a bouncer in the world that should be ever looking for problems. It's always looking for solutions. And you and I, that's what we do. Our job is not to sell, it's to create solutions and help somebody.
So talking about martial arts, I also have a background in Muay Thai, and nowadays I still practice lots of martial arts, and I thank at least 20% of that to my today's success, the discipline that instilled in me, the pain of 2 hours of like high intensity sparring and all of that. Let's talk about discipline and sales and parallels between the martial arts world. What kind of discipline does it take to be a great salesman?
So you can be an okay salesman if you know how to talk to people and you will wake up at least half the time and do something. To be a great salesperson, it takes discipline. It takes knowing that I have to be up at a certain time, that if I don't do my job, somebody else will do my job. It is everything. It is working on the days that you don't want to. People ask me all the time, how do you make X dollars in this business? How do I make $150,000 a year? How do I make $200,000 a year? And I tell people all the time, it's the easiest thing in the world. Work 40 hours a week. Just get up every morning, do something, be productive. I've got a little technique that I teach people and train people on social media, because there are a tremendous, and I love your numbers. I love the 200 calls a day. I love what you're saying about those things and what you do and how many people you reach out to. And that's one of the things that I teach, because if you've got a task and you have to complete that task, it will make your life and your job so much easier. So I am 100% behind you, and I agree with you that the martial arts taught me the discipline that I have to perform at the top of my job. And if I don't do that, if I slip, if I watch my numbers drop, if I watch things going on, because I'm the only one responsible, it's my responsibility, then I can take that straight back to getting lackadaisical. Or one of the things, we've got a saying here in the States where we say, don't believe your own press. When people start talking about how great you are, things like that, we'll start getting, a kind of a big head, and we'll believe that we are that great when we're not. We're just another plug to fill a hole, and it's what we do with that time. So you and I are on such the same path, such the same channel.
Yeah, well, salespeople shared a lot. Well, great ones. They shared the same or similar mindset. As I told a couple of clients today, sales is one of the hardest profession, especially biz dev. You're always out there. It's really much like a hunter, right? Like back in the paleo times, we were the ones that would go out, kill the animal literally, and bring it back to the village. While closers are the ones that would remove the animal's content and cook it and so forth. Closer vs SDR analogy. It's a tough profession, and that's why I think folks like you and I are attracted to it. We love the challenge. We love the adrenaline. We love coming back home after a long day of work and just like be completely exhausted and having given it your all. So I think discipline is an essential quality for this specific profession. And yeah, I think you've achieved somewhat the pinnacle of that, being a VP Biz Dev at AFN, which is a great position. So tell us about your team there and what you do exactly, and what are your best sales tactic to keep the team motivated and keep them hunting and bringing back meat to the village.
Well, I'm lucky because for me, every single day of my life, I am positive. I've got energy. And it exudes. I have people constantly. I'm doing a big major stage presence coming up a week from Friday. And one of the things that I get a kick out of is the person who's putting it on is half my age. And when they put together the flyer, basically it says, with all of the energy that Johnny brings, we're going to bring him from backstage. This is what it is. So I'm lucky that I have that. How do I keep my team? So I've got the greatest team that there is. And I think one of the things that makes my team so great is we all realize, no matter if we are directly or indirectly, that we're all on the same team. We're all rowing the same way. We all have the same goal. It is to get somebody into a home, get somebody into the correct mortgage, the correct loan for what it is, and let's move on to the next one. Let's help as many people as we can. And everybody rows the same way. And if you don't fit, if you're one of those negative people, or if you're one of those people that can find a problem for every solution, then you just don't fit inside of this. So one of the things that I do is constantly giving that push, giving that help, whatever it is. And for me, one of the things I've been doing for the past 8 years solid every single day is showing people social media and doing it the correct way, not doing it like you and I were talking earlier, and you've built the funnels. You know what it is. You've built the systems for mortgage brokers, for real estate brokers. Up until about 2 years ago, I was the largest real estate funnel in the country. I was running 750 Facebook pages and Instagram pages every single day, advertising to about 150 to bring leads in. And you had to know what it was. When you're spending 7 figures with outside systems like that, you have to know what it is that you're doing.
Hell yeah.
And it's just bringing that energy. It's bringing that help to people. And that's one of the things. I've just been so lucky in my life to be able to do that.
Yeah. Energy is pretty much everything, like people sell their time, but the common denominator is always energy. You sell your energy at the end of the day, you produce a certain amount of energy, or you don't, like some people, they actually consume energy all the time because they're always in a deficit of energy. So my question for you, John, is how do you create that energy? Is it something that comes natural, or do you need to stimulate it with other methods?
It's a little bit of both. So I'm lucky enough that I have it in my DNA to where I'm excited I woke up this morning, and I'm excited I'm still alive and not 6 feet under. I'm excited that I live in the country that I'm in, that I get to do the things that I want to do. So all of those things. But, just like you and I both, there are things that outside forces that will try and bring us down, that crab effect, the trying to bring us back down. So I use outside systems to help me. So I'm a huge fan of Zig Ziglar and Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and people like that. And I'm a firm believer in Zig Ziglar saying, he's got this great saying that some people say motivation doesn't work continuously. That's why we recommend it like bathing, you do it every single day. So it is using those systems. If you and I weren't on this podcast right now, in the background on YouTube or some sort of system, I would have something playing in the background. I'd have Gary Vaynerchuk playing in the background. I would have music that gets me going and moving, playing in the background just to help me. One of the things, and you're much younger than I am, and I've got to tell you this, at some point, maybe you've already got there, because I think you're much more advanced than I was at your age. You have to tell yourself that it's okay to turn it off. At 9 o'clock at night, at 10 o'clock at night, 100%. It's okay to turn it off or to dial it down a little bit, because I was one of those firm believers that it was perfectly acceptable for me to get 3 hours or 4 hours of sleep, which is not accurate. There are things that I listened to and things that I was taught that I have figured out, by the time I get to be in my mid 50s, that it's not true. It's not that bullshit story that I get excited on every no that I get because I know I'm getting closer to a yes. That's not true at all. No's hurt my feelings. No's are something that I don't want to hear. So what I need to do to make less no's is find out what the issue is. How can I help this person? Am I listening, or am I trying to sell them something? It's things like that. So, and I think that you're, like I said, I think you're much more advanced than I was at your age. So I'm hoping that you've already given yourself permission for that.
You're flattering, but these principles I've adopted probably year 1 or year 2 when I was an entrepreneur, because else burnout was looming. And even at 20, because I started my entrepreneurial career at 18, and much folks that are stuck in the hustle culture, they just don't ever give up on the idea. And when I was one of these folks, I used to dream about business. So I would wake up and I would be tired. And I would be like, I solved a couple of problems in my sleep, but still I'd be tired because my brain was still working on business problems when I would sleep. And recovery is immensely important. If you look at top athletes, they focus on 2 things: 1, performance, and 2, recovery. And if you neglect recovery, you're not going to have the benefits that they have. Most muscles are built while you sleep. And it's pretty much the same with neuronal connections. Me on my side, I'm a huge biohacker, so always been following the latest trends. I do also listen to a bunch of music, when I work, the electrotype, because it keeps on the beat and keeps on the
Yes.
energy high. And I'm still, stuck on Tony Robbins. He had his Unleash the whatever that was, the conference virtual event a couple weeks ago, and that was so good. And people hate on self-help, but it's just that they didn't consume it, and self-help didn't have that impact in their own life. And positivity is so underrated. It's so easy to create problems. That's how we're naturally wired as humans. Create 5 problems for every solution, right? But the other way around is way better. And especially in business, it's not better, it's essential. We cannot hang around negative folks that create problem. It's one, for every one problem, there needs to be at least 5 solutions.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. And you're right, Tony Robbins, we're all operating with a 2,000-year-old operating system that told us to run away from saber-tooth tigers. So it's overcoming that. One of the things that you hit on that I'd really like to talk about, or at least add in, because I know we don't have a whole lot of time, but one of the things I'd really like to add in is when you're talking about sports. So one of the things that I've always got a kick out of, and this is something that's always kind of confused me about people, especially negative people, is we think when we become 18 years old that now I'm an adult, now I don't need anybody else. And if you'll go back a little bit and you'll look at what I'm going to consider one of the greatest athletes that the world has ever had, but we've ever had, was this guy who played basketball out of Chicago, Illinois, named Michael Jordan. I don't know if you remember that name or not, but in my opinion, he was, and probably still is, the greatest of all times.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I loved him talking about is the fact that he may be the greatest of all times, but at all times he had a coach. He had somebody helping him, somebody pushing him, somebody telling him, you're dragging your left heel, your left elbow is too low. Whatever that is, that's not saying that that person's better than him. That's saying that that person has an outside perspective helping. And I think that's something that's necessary, not only for people in sales, but people just period need to have either some sort of positive mentor, some sort of coach, some sort of, these days we don't have real friends. We've got acquaintances, because a real friend can say, Charles, your hair looks stupid like that. You need to start dyeing it purple and put it up. And that person wants the best for you, as opposed to, we just have acquaintances now. So I think that's something that's really important. I am so glad you brought up the sports analogy. I have always been one that felt some of the greatest salespeople that you will ever meet. And I'm not talking about the slimy used car sales guy wearing a plaid suit. I'm talking about people that can fix your problem.
Oh, yeah.
Those people are people that realized that there is a purpose for them. They wanted to find out what the solution was for you and help you find that solution. And the more people they help, the better off they are. So, and I think that team sports has really helped people with that.
100%. That's why CEOs look up to athletes and athletes look up to CEOs. Both share the same DNA, the same mindset. And yeah, super important. I have my coaches, and guess what? This podcast, like, you're a coach, I'm a coach. We're learning from one another. Accountability, mentoring. That's how you learn, and learning is the name of the game to improve yourself. So John, you've dropped so much value in a short amount of time. Really glad to have you today. Where can people find out more about you?
Anywhere. I'm a huge social media guy, so you can find me anywhere on Facebook. I'm Jonathan Fowler. I go by Jonny Fowler. You can find me at johnnyfowler.com. You can find me on Instagram at Here's Jonny Fowler. You can find me on LinkedIn, 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. I maxed out on that at Jonathan Fowler. Anywhere. My phone number is 281-352-7307. Again, johnnyfowler.com. Find me anywhere, but mostly what I prefer is social media. When I was a kid, we were placed in front of the television. It was square at the time, and we were propped up with pillows, and that's who the authority was. Whoever was on that screen was the authority. Now that we are in this tech age like we are, every single one of us has the ability to not only have our own television show, but we can have 20 or 30 or 40 television shows on multiple platforms, and it cost us absolutely nothing to do this. So I'm a huge proponent. I'm a huge fan of social media and getting your message out there.
Love it, John. Max out, baby. So thank you so much. That was very entertaining.